Hello, this is Dr. E from La Cañada High School. We're doing section 9.7 on ocean acidification. Learning objective here is to explain the causes and effects of ocean acidification. For example, decrease in pH. The decreased pH is CO2 is because of the huge increase of CO2 in the atmosphere. They can contribute to acidification because there's more CO2 in the water. And the CO2 is from fossil fuels, vehicle emissions, deforestation, and it causes problem. Now, the suggested skills is to be able to explain this concept, process, or models in applied contents. So ocean acidification. Increases CO2 in the atmosphere increases the amount of CO2. It's a direct exchange. More CO2 in the air, more CO2 in the water. Now, this CO2 combines with water to form bicarbonate, to form carbonic acid, H2CO3. Now, this carbonic acid can dissociate into bicarbonate ions and a hydrogen ion. Now, these hydrogen ions will bind with carbonate to form bicarbonate ions. So calcium carbonate in marine organisms. Marine organisms make their shells with calcium and the carbonate ions to build their calcium carbonate shells. So the calcium combines with carbonate to form the carbonate shells. That's called calcification. Now the CO2 if there's a CO2 increase in acidification of the ocean, this makes the carbonate ions less available. Why? Because the carbonic acid leads to increased hydrogen ions, which bind with the carbonate to form bicarbonate, like what we saw before. If there's more carbonate, there's less carbonate to make the shells. Marine shells will break down as pH decreases, becomes more acidic, and the carbon ions are less soluble in the ocean water and dissolve from the shells. Fewer carbonate ions, less calcification. That means there's going to be weaker shells of the coral, mollusk, and urchins. And you can see here, if you put a pH of 7.8 with a shell, after 15 days, you can already see it's getting lighter. After 30 days, and then 45 days, it's dissolving. Climate change and acidification. Anthropogenic causes for ocean acidic, as we've seen before: fossil fuel consumption, deforestation, which leads to CO2 due to the burning, coal and gas combustion, where the nitrates and sulfates lead to acid precipitation. CO2 increase directly correlated with ocean acidification. There's an inverse relationship between atmospheric CO2 and ocean pH, meaning the more CO2, the more in the atmosphere, there's more CO2 in the water. More CO2 in the water, that makes the water more acidic, but that means that the pH is going to be going down. So you can see here, with the red side, the CO2 is going up in the atmosphere, but the ocean water, the pH is going down. Ocean pH has decreased from 8.2 to 8.1 in the past 150 years. It's expected to decrease to 7.8 by 2100. Now, because the pH scale is logarithmic, 8.2 to 8.1 is a 30% decrease in the pH. So your practice FRQ for this for 9.7. Can you identify a human activity that leads to ocean acidification? And 2, can you explain how ocean acidification can threaten marine organisms? Thank you, and I hope this has been helpful.